You're listening to Thrive and Soar podcast, a podcast dedicated to help you thrive in every facet of life. I'm your host, Theodora Nadi. If you're a returning listener, I love you. And first time tuning in, thank you for stopping by. Welcome, and I'm so happy to have you here. On this podcast, I share contents related to faith, wellness, and personal development, and so much more. So stay tuned and let's see what we've got today. Yeah, on this episode, I'm going to, let me just say, this episode is going to be, pardon me, it's going to be everywhere because I really don't even know what to call this, but it's just my experiences so far. Yeah, I'm going to be sharing my experiences so far, especially that related to my relocation. And I'd like to call it my testimony, but in between this testimony is a whole lot that revolves around my major waiting seasons, trusting God to come through, and the rest of them. So basically, although this is going to be my testimony, but it's going to touch different aspects of our faith in Christ, and it's going to touch different aspects of my walk with Christ. So far, so good. Yes. So, if this video ever makes it to YouTube, in fact, this should be my first video podcast. Yeah. And if this video ever makes it to YouTube, help me and thank God it's long overdue. I've been planning, I've been procrastinating. In fact, I have recorded several videos that I didn't get the courage to actually put it out there. But yeah, let's just see how this one goes. And well, I'm so happy to be here. So, like I said, this story is going to be majorly about one of my longest waiting seasons, and it has to do with relocation, my relocation testimony or my relocation story. So yeah, back in 2019, back in 2019, the stress, or let me just say the effort one puts in into going to a foreign country to study and probably in search of a greener pasture, like maybe after studying that you will be able to get a job, stay back, work, and the rest of them. So coming to the UK, I had my hopes high. I really wanted to study, get a job, and stay back in the UK. So that was part of my plan. But yeah, 1 month into my stay in the UK, I met someone who told me about express entry. Yeah, the person actually shared the pathway with me and said I should make research about that and read it up, which I did. And at that point in time, I found out that I because it's a point-based system, because the express entry thing is a point-based thing, my score was still a bit low because at that point in time I still had only one degree. I was still doing my master's. So I said, okay, well, fine, let me just wait for the master's to finish before I can think about that one. But while I'm on it, I'm just going to concentrate on my studies and be searching for a job in the UK. So that was happening and everything was just going well. And then COVID came. So COVID came, and who would have told me that COVID was going to change the trajectory of a lot of things around what I perceived to be my plan at that point in time. So yes, I had everything. I felt I had everything all figured out, and days were turning into weeks and weeks were turning into months. And eventually I finished my master's program. And at that point, with regards to my Canada journey, my score was already higher than what it should be, but I hadn't written my first IELTS. Yes. So back to that time, due to COVID, a lot of restrictions, but I eventually got around it. I eventually found my way around it and prepared for the exam, sat for the exam. Unfortunately, that first IELTS didn't come out as I expected, and that was the beginning of the wait. Yes, it didn't come out as expected. So my score with that IELTS wasn't even close to the 460s or the 417s. Express entry was cutting at that point in time. So life went on. I felt bad about not getting this, but while I was on that, I didn't know that the waiting was just going to be longer than I expected. So a few days after I got on my IELTS, Canada did their um, they did in fact the lowest general draw up to today. Yes, they did that draw, and the score was something I could have I could have had if my IELTS was okay. But because my IELTS, my one of my modules, in fact all of them put together, and my score was very low. So yes, I couldn't get an invitation to apply. So I said, okay, fine, no problem. That in the coming 2 months or maybe in 1 month, I'm going to write again, and then I'm going to get into the pool. And that was the plan. So yes, I went back to my reading table. I started preparing again for the test. Eventually 2 months later, I wrote another test. This time around, I got it. My score was so perfect as at then. Yes, my score was so perfect, and I was thinking that, yeah, I've gotten the perfect score, and that by next week or by next 2 weeks, that once IRCC does another draw, that it's going to favor me, and then I'm going to be getting my invitation to apply. So yeah, my hope was dashed, because the next month came and nothing happened. The next 2 months came, nothing happened, and the 1 year came and nothing happened. I was in the pool with my good score, and yet nothing happened for 1 year. And then I was just being patient. I was being patient. Yes, I was very, 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 very patient at this time. But that my patience was something else, because there were days I would wake up and then I feel frustrated about the whole thing. I get angry and all sorts of negative feelings that was just accompanying the whole waiting season at that point in time. Yes, but amidst it all, I was so sure that one day that it's going to work out, right? So while on this, I'll tell anybody that cares to know, do you know about this pathway? Have you tried it? And all sorts of things. So yeah, it's just I brought a whole lot of people onto the train without mine walking yet. And yes, they were walking out theirs too, and a lot was happening and a lot was changing. So finally, after a year and 6 months, yes, that is 18 months after I wrote my that IELTS, IRCC got around and they started doing other draws. They now started doing the general draws again. But this time around, this general draw became higher, way higher than what it used to be. Yes, it became higher. And from from judging from my score at that time, there was no way I could qualify for an invitation to apply at that point in time. So yes, everything continued and went on, and I was still keeping my hopes high. Like people I told, my friends, everybody, we were waiting. It was going well for some who had higher scores and the rest of them. So all of us were just we had everything some of us were being patient and some of us were already in the process. But for me, I was still being patient. But at that point in time, I didn't even know what was going to happen or how, or in fact, I just didn't know what was going to happen. My hope wasn't, okay, fine, God, I know that it will come true for me. It got to a point, and then I would say that seriously, that whatever it is that is in this journey is left in the hands of God. Like it's between now, it's no longer between me and anybody. It's no longer between me and any police. It's no longer between me and any COVID or anything. It was between me and God. I would always say that So everything continued till last year. Yeah, till last year. So not even last year, prior to last year, I guess that was when God just started working everything around for my good. So a lot of policies were changing, they were passing some bills and then um, making some normal changes. But this time around, these changes weren't just normal for me. If you ask me, the changes, every single changes made favored me. The new bill they brought in, which allowed them to choose people with certain experience, certain work experience, and to also select people with okay, yes, they also did some changes with regards to NOCs, that's the occupation code, and actually that changes downgraded some and brought up some, upgraded some NOCs and downgraded some NOCs, which one of my work experiences was upgraded. And at that point in time, I didn't even know, and I had no idea that it would be that work experience that would see me through. So I was just going about my duty, but then one day I found out that one of the provinces did a draw, and they were targeting people with certain work experiences related to the one I did while I was in the UK. So yes, so it was. I was very excited, and then on going back, I found out that that even the NOC changes they did favored me because that work experience was upgraded and made it eligible for express entry. So I was happy, and I made some changes to reflect to include that my NOC in my profile and the rest of them. It wasn't far, and when I got a notification of interest from that same province that I could submit an application for provincial nomination, yes, which I did. And but mind you, at this time, remember I wrote an IELTS, and IELTS expires in 2 years. So at this point, my IELTS was about to expire. I don't think I had up to 2 weeks for it to expire, and there is no way you can have a valid application without a valid IELTS, which means I still needed to go back to the exam hall to write another IELTS. So this time around, I had like about 4 days to prepare for IELTS again, and then write, submit my application, and the rest of them, which I did. Yes, I had to prepare for another IELTS in 3 days, write the IELTS, and as God will have it, everything went well again. I got a good score. My score was still intact with few lapses. Yes, I stepped down a bit, which means at that point in time, the score I had was lower than what I had before the expiration. So yes, but all the same, because I already had a provincial nomination, or no, because I already had a notification of interest from one of the provinces, I wasn't I wasn't scared. I felt okay, no matter what, that eventually that God will make a way, and then they nominate me and I'm going to get more points. And when it adds up, that the lapses wouldn't even matter. So I was happy and everything was just going on well. And here comes a season where I submitted an application and I was in a group. I was in a Telegram group where a, tele, a Telegram group of people who have also, a Telegram group of people on the same journey, people who have also submitted application and waiting for a response or waiting for an approval from this province. Yes. So in this group, because it's a very close knit group and it was just us, people who have applied, who have submitted an application. So there is this process whereby when something happens, like when your application moves from one stage to another, you have to update us. You have to like give us your timeline so that we know what's going on, so that we'll be able to actually look at our own and see if we're making the same progress and the rest of them. So at that point in time, I had submitted my application long ago. 30 days later, people were already, that's people I submitted with, people who submitted within the same time frame as I did, were already updating their timeline, showing that they had moved from one point to another. They've moved from one stage of the application to another stage of the application. So it was very clear these people couldn't be lying because um for example, people who submitted on 12 would update today. Like it's normal for you to expect people who submitted on 14 to update the next day, and this was just happening. So but yeah, I submitted, but unfortunately at that point nothing happened. My application was just there. Nothing was happening. Everything was just there. And people were updating. And I was worried. Yes, I was worried. I was asking myself, what is happening? What is happening at this point? Why are other people's application moving and mine is not moving? What is the problem? I was overwhelmed. I was surprised. I was worried. I was angry. I was frustrated. Yes. I had like I was, and one thing about me is that I tend to be sometimes when I'm yet to understand what God is doing at a particular point in my life, at a particular season in my life, I can get frustrated. Yes. And then you just see me get worked up, trying to know, God, what are you saying in this season? God, why is this happening? So at that point in time, everybody's application was progressing and mine was just one place. People who submitted 2 weeks, 3 weeks after I did already made a progress. They already moved 2 stages ahead. In fact, they were already in their final stage. And there I was, still in submitted. It was a whole lot of emotions for me. 30 days passed, 60 days passed. Within these 60 days, if not all of them, had already moved from the first stage to the last stage. They were just waiting for their decision, and I was still in submitted. So this thing continued, and on a certain day, I remember that day was on a Friday. It was I was already losing it. So that day I couldn't do anything. I was just crying and I was like, God, what? This one again. And I was asking God, okay, let's just assume that every other thing that has happened about this, let's just say that every other thing has happened. Every other thing that has happened, I didn't know about this, but this one, there are people on this same journey with me. Why is my own not progressing? I was asking this question, and this is more like a question we ask in every day of our life, and then you see people around you making progress, and then you're asking yourself, what is happening? What is happening? What is different about your journey that at least you can't even make 2 steps ahead, or just take 2 steps forward, or even just at least shift slightly from where you are? So that is just that was what was happening in that season, at that season, in that point. That was what was happening at that point in time. So that Friday I was crying, and I remember my mom walked to me that day, and she was saying, and she was telling me not to cry and I should not worry. And then at the same time she was like, God, how do we need to pray and how do we need to walk around this for you to answer us? That was my mom asking. Yes, why she was consoling me, but we were in a place where we were still worried, like, what is happening again? We are seeing this. So I also remember that day, and because I was down and I wasn't in the mood to talk to people, my phone was ringing and a friend of mine was calling me. I had checked my phone that day, and when I glanced through it, when I glanced on my screen, I noticed that my friend was calling me. But because I wasn't in a place to answer, I just said, oh no, I can't even take this call now. And then I dropped it. And yeah, my mom was just there, was saying, God, please forgive my daughter for being angry. I was angry. I just said, no, mommy, oh, leave me and God today so that I need to vent my anger. What is happening? What is happening? And yeah, my mom was just busy apologizing on my behalf. And me, I was still ranting and being unnecessarily angry. And I didn't even know that God was working behind the scene to favor me in an unimaginable way, right? So that's Friday came, and then at the end of the day, before the end of the day, usually I'm someone that can I am there's one thing I have learned in in the last 3 years or 4 years of my life is that it is okay for me, in my opinion, it is okay to feel bad, but do not let the negative emotions swallow you. So at that point in time, I was angry. But one thing I do is not let that anger envelop me. What I do is I do not let those negative emotions sleep on me or like sit on me and take the greater part of me. So it was easy for me to swing out of the angry, out of the negative emotions, the frustrations, and the anger. And so life moved on. And next day was on a Saturday, yes. And that Saturday, I think when I woke up in the morning, I don't know what I was doing, but when I was arranging, if I remember clearly, I was arranging my clothes, and then something said to me, "Are you sure you updated your IELTS?" Usually, things like this, I'm very meticulous with them. So, but that day, when I felt that I didn't do something wrong, the usual me would sit back immediately, log in to confirm if I actually did the right thing. But that day, yes, after my IELTS expired and I wrote another IELTS, I sent a notification to them telling them that my profile has changed and I had written a new IELTS. But while I was sending that email, there was an oversight and I didn't include my IELTS. So that Saturday, my mind told me that asked if I was sure I submitted. But the usual me, I waved it out. Like I was like, no, that shouldn't be a problem. I'm sure I submitted without confirming. But yes, this was just God again working overtime on my behalf. Okay, you will see why why I thought that was so why I thought it was God that just took my mind out of it. Yes, because if I went on to check, I could have noticed and I could have rectified the mistake. So the next day was on a Sunday. I went to church, came back from church. I was lying on my bed that evening. Usually Sunday evenings, like I don't know how to. Then I don't know how to describe the emotions I usually feel those Sunday evenings in those waiting season because I didn't know what the week will bring. Like it's just a mixture of hope. Like I just pray that this week is going to bring forth everything that I have been expecting, right? So that Sunday, while I was there and I was still worried, I was still worried, yes. It's true I wasn't angry, but I was worried. I was worried because I didn't know what was happening. So, and then my mind went back to the fact that my friend called me on Friday and she said, just call her. I said, no, I will not call her. Let me call her tomorrow. I'm not even in the mood to answer a call. I was saying this thing like now, and in the next 1 minute, my phone rang and it was not my friend calling me back again. So when she called me, we exchanged pleasantries. And then she told me she called me a few days back on Friday because she wanted to tell me about something great that happened in her life, right? And so she was just recounting a story of how she landed her job, how it was a miracle, how she wasn't even expecting it, and how she was paid. Even like she was just telling me a whole. What happened was that Friday she called me, and that call came in to give me hope. But because I was just so focused on my anger, I missed out on a call of hope that I could have answered. Yes. So, and after she was telling me a story of how someone had given her a pamphlet, and usually that she was meant to like discard the leaflet, but on the second thought, she held it for the longest time. But that at a place where she herself was going to worry about whether what she was expecting at that point would work for her. She said she doesn't that she can't remember what took her mind to the leaflet she was with, and then she read it, and lo and behold, her eyes moved to Philippians 4 verse 16, if I'm right. the verse that talks about us not being anxious about anything and not worrying about anything, but in all things that we should that we should pray about all things, right? That we should thank God and that we should just carry our worries to God. And so that was what she was telling me at that point in time, and how she held on to that scripture, how she held on to that verse at that point in time. So while she was just narrating this story and got to the part of Philippians 4:16, the part where we don't need to be anxious, I just told her, babe, enough. This is it, that nobody's going to tell me otherwise, that this is the particular scripture God wanted me to know about that particular Friday that you were calling me, that this is it. But fine, that I got the memo, that I'm not going to worry again because I already know that God is in control. That was the consolation I needed that Sunday night. And I said to her, thank you for even calling back again. Thank you. Do you know that a few minutes ago that I wanted to call you, but at the same time, I shoved the idea away and you called. Thank you for calling. I was so happy. And for the rest of the night, I held on to that scripture. Do not worry about anything. So, and I didn't want to worry. And that was it for the night. And the next morning, in the afternoon, evening, yes, I got the notification my application was withdrawn. Yes, that application was withdrawn. And before I could even get myself to look at it very well and maybe write an email telling them that it was an oversight and to see if they could reconsider, I got a refund of my application money, which means that journey was over. So I felt bad, but at the same time, I still banked on the scripture that I shouldn't worry about anything because, yes, God was working over time on my behalf. Long story cut short, prior to them, because my profile expired, I was able to get another notification of interest from that same province in my new profile. So after 70 days, my application was withdrawn. Remember, the people I started this journey with, we were already waiting for their decision, but nothing had happened at that point in time. They had not gotten their final decision, and mine was withdrawn. So I went back and I just decided not to worry. Few and I just decided not to worry. And few days later, no. That same week, 2 days later, IRCC released a memo saying that in few weeks' time that they would be starting that a category-based draw, and this is what a category-based draw is going to look like. Lo and behold, I was eligible for that draw. I was eligible. Now, the first thing is I met the eligibility. Now, let's talk about the score. What mark? What are they going to draw? As in, what will be their cutoff mark, right? I didn't know. But the most important thing is that I was eligible. And looking at the trend, so far so good. Something just kept on telling me that this will work for me. But I still kept my hope high. So like they said they were going to start the draw by summer. They were going to start the draw by summer. So I was looking forward to summer and was also waiting to see if I could submit the new application. That's the application for the provincial nomination. But 2 weeks down the line and then 3 weeks down the line, that week, my notification of interest was also meant to expire, and that week should be the beginning of summer in Canada the year. So I said, well, let me just use the one I have already. So I submitted an application for another provincial nomination while waiting for that of the federal application to come through. So that day, nothing, the first day of summer, of course, nothing happened. And that day, I remember saying, God, we've come this far. You and I know that at this point, this is not even a case of am I eligible or not, or a case of whether I have been on this journey or not. whether like I wasn't even thinking of anything. The only thing I said, God, you know that whatever it is that is left of this journey is in your hands. So God overdid. God, he outdid himself. Yes, he worked overtime on my behalf. I remember seeing that prayer, and this was maybe a few days into summer. So that day, I came back. I came back home from work. I came back home from work, and I was making dinner. When I went back again to grab my phone to check something, I realized that IRCC circulated another memo that they will be doing their first category based draw on that day, and they were going to start with people with my category, the category I was eligible for. What a miracle. I was excited. I was happy. First of all, I knew that it was going to take a miracle. Well, they gave out the number, and like I said, a certain province has been choosing people from my category, so I know what is like. I know the number that needs to get picked to be able to for my score to fit in. So that day, I was very happy. I was excited, and fortunately, they specified that they will be doing their first draw that day, and in 1 week time, they will be doing another draw again for people in my category. This was the miracle. They had not done the first round for others, and they were doing the second one for my category. Mind you, at this point, in fact, at this point, when they circulated that memo, if anything, in fact, if that second draw didn't happen, I would have lost my eligibility. Yes, because the experience I was using to, because the experience that I used to get that invitation to apply was related to my past work experience that I did while I was in the UK. And because I said between the last 3 years, that experience was going to become ineligible that month. So, and I also remember telling God that, well, this is between this is between you and them and no longer me and them. You just have to find a way. And of course, he's the one in charge. And he made a way. He made them do a double draw for my category in 1 week. And not just any draw, not just even a low score draw. It's just like the goodness, I don't know how to explain it, but whatever it is they did at that point in time, I keep on saying that whatever it is, the policies they changed and so many things was in my favor. God saw me and God used because of me to pull that. So that day came, and the day of the draw came, and we were looking forward to that day. I was looking forward to that day. And in our group, remember, I had an application, but at that point in time, when I wasn't worrying anymore, I know I would hear God tell me, don't worry. He kept on assuring me not to worry, that I would get there with my group, the same people I got that notification of interest with, that I'm going to get there with them, that nobody is going to leave each other behind. All of us are going to get there together. And he just wants to make it in a way that it will be better for me. I didn't even know that God was just planning. God was just doing everything to ensure that he secured that application fee I was meant to pay to the province. So the day we anticipated came, and yes, the draw didn't happen again. And then the next day came again, the draw didn't happen again. Was it? Yes. And then finally the third day came, and just a few minutes before the draw happened, I had found out that wasn't just about me being eligible to get an invitation to apply. My eligibility had to also extend to till when I submit my application. I found, like, I had no idea. I've never read ministerial instructions. But that day, something took me to those something took me to read the ministerial instructions, which I did. And after I read it, I realized that when even if I get that, if I get my invitation to apply on that day, I must try to submit my application before my eligibility expired. My eligibility was expiring in 4 days. Yes. And at that point in time, my documents were not complete. In fact, at that point in time, I had applied for a new passport. I had also requested for I requested for my UK police certificate, which I hadn't received at that point in time. And also I was trying to apply for Nigeria police certificate too, but for some reason I don't know what was happening. It wasn't working. Not until that evening that I got my invitation to apply. I was so excited. Like, something you've actually been waiting for. But that was just the beginning of it all, right? So I rejoiced, I sang, I prayed, I said, God, thank you. Thank you for showing up. And a few hours later, it dawned on me that this isn't just about being happy. You need to submit this application in a few days. So that night, I was restless throughout the night. But when I knew that God was already working overtime yet again for my sake, from nowhere, I got a notification that my passport was ready for me to pick it up. I also got the Nigeria police certificate that I had been trying to apply for, went through that night too. Like the whole thing was happening like a movie. These are things I've actually been working towards getting, and then in the last 2 hours, everything is just moving. So the next day, because of the restrictions, I don't know. Like there are days you wake up in my part of Nigeria, and then there is no movement. I had no idea that there wouldn't even be movement that next day. But it was when I got out and I got to the road, I realized that a lot of people weren't out at that point in time. But I just told myself that no matter what, today is Friday, my eligibility would expire on Tuesday, and Monday also is sit at home. We are not meant to go out on Monday. So everything, if I needed to go pick up my passport, um, um get the police certificate and the rest of them, then I needed to go out that Friday. I remember just saying, God, protect me. Let me just be going anyhow. And I went and I collected my passport and went on to the next place, which was my police certificate. On getting there, I was told that I would not be able to thumbprint. I was told that I wouldn't be able to thumbprint because like they said that I hadn't gotten to the stage, or maybe that my message had not dropped. I don't know they were saying, but yes, I couldn't. I still needed to wait for a message to come up before I am able to thumbprint. So this was happening around 10 a.m. that day. I know I left there and I went to a nearby store and I sat down and I was waiting for them. I was waiting for the message. And while I was there, I was I don't know. I don't even know the emotion. I don't even know the words. I don't even know what to use to describe what I was feeling at that point in time. But one thing I knew and I remember vividly is that I kept on reciting Matthew 19:26, which says that what is impossible with man is possible with God. So I just said, God, remember you said that even if it's impossible with us, it is possible with you. I kept on saying this, that yes, that it may look impossible that I can get this police certificate today, but you said that with you, all things are possible. This was my watch verse on that day. And I just kept on saying it. I was praying repeatedly. At some point, I started calling the police headquarters. They said it's an automated process and they cannot do anything about it. So yeah, I was just there. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, nothing. 2 o'clock, nothing. 3 o'clock, nothing. And at that point, I just finished saying, it was when I finished saying my, was it my Divine Mercy Rosary, that I I just said, okay, fine. Now I need to stand up and start going home. It was about to rain, and everywhere was just a bit chaotic. And also, it was on a Friday, and it's just as if everybody we already planning to go home around that 3 after 3, and the weather didn't even help matters. So as they were packing up, I was also packing up to go home. So, and but I was on call with my friend that day, and then she kept on assuring me not to worry, that everything will work out. Where am I going to? That it's not yet night and I'm going. I said, well, I don't know. I just need to start going home. And I remember I stood up from the nearby store where I sat, and I was going to the bus stop to board a bus back to my house. When I got to the bus stop, I was standing there. I stood there. The first bus came and passed me. The second one came and also passed me. And the third one as well. They all passed me. And I was wondering, what is happening? So, you know what happened? I went to one of the ladies standing there, or there was a lady who had a shop close by. And I went to her, I said, Ma, please, just to confirm, is this place still a bus stop? And she said, yeah, it's still a bus stop. So I went back. And while I was standing there, another bus now came and stopped right in front of me. I remember vividly, I had only taken up my first feet to climb onto the bus when my phone vibrated. I took the feet down. I took I took my foot down, and I checked my message. And it was a notification to go and submit my biometrics. Hey, God. I ran back. I was singing. I was dancing. I was crying. I ran back to the office. I said, sir, they've sent the message. I can now do my biometrics. Now I got to the time for biometrics. I don't even know what was wrong with network. I was just there praying, God, if you have come this far, I know that you are in charge, and I know that you will see me through to the end of it. At the end of the day, everything worked well. I later boarded the bus and went home. I remember that day when I was in the bus, I was dancing. If you see me dancing, hey God, you will be asking, what is wrong with this one? What is, but you people, they will not understand. I went back home happy, at least whatever it is and everything I went out to do that day, I achieved all of them last minute. But, and God came through. So the next day, I was like, God, there are still some documents missing, and I don't even know what to do about it, but I know that I need to submit my application. I need wisdom. Help me to craft a compelling letter. And yeah, that prayer worked, because in the next few minutes, I was able to gather my words together. And then I wrote a letter explaining that, yes, I had already booked for a medical exam and some other things, but that they are not ready. But this, I gave them, like, I updated the evidence of the applications I've made with regards to the UK police certificate and also the medical exam. So I attached the letter to my application and submitted. Prior to submitting, my village people wanted to work overtime, because they said, leave it now, so that next tomorrow you also, I be tomorrow, I will also peruse it again before I'm able to submit. How? God knew that there won't be network on that day. You know what? Said Amara. Said, you know what? Once he said, submit this application, I just said, let me submit. If I've come this far, then God is in it. Why should I even worry myself? That was just the mindset I had at that point in time. So I submitted the application and I received the acknowledgement of receipt of application. Yes. So, which means I conquered the short timeline I had between when I got my invitation to apply and when my eligibility expired. I conquered. So I was very happy. I was very happy. I slept well that night. The next day, that day, I was planning to submit that application. Do you know what happened? There was no network. The website was down. Maybe it was undergoing maintenance, I don't know. But it was down. And that thing lasted till my eligibility expired. Had it been I didn't submit that day, what could have happened? I may even be able to submit, but I will not receive the acknowledgement. Like, how? It can only be God. So the next few days, I that day I got a notification and I opened it and I noticed that it was from RCC, and I was worried again, yet again. I was like, what is happening? Well, you know what? It was it was a notification that I could proceed to the next stage. This thing happened within the space of 4 days now. It happened within the space of 4 days. How? Somebody told me how. Like, I was still planning, God, that I could proceed to the next stage. And the next stage that I was still thinking, yes, that maybe when I go to Lagos for my medical exam, that I'll be able to just stay back and pray and hope that God is going to bring the second process so that I can be able to do everything together, which is to submit my biometrics, right? So everything just continued and it was just going fine. It was just going swiftly. It exceeded my expectation. And at the end of the day, that week, at the end of that week, I was able to submit my biometrics and also submit the documents I wasn't able to include in my application while when I submitted. So I concluded everything that day. And so that was it. And that was my part to play in that journey, right? And everything was left for God. So God took over and the whole application, the processes went through. And while God was handling that, He was also arranging so many other things about my life that I'm not yet to talk about now, other than this relocation part. So, and within the next 2 months, was it 2 months? Yes, or more. I guess it was more, but yeah, I was monitoring my application, and like I said, one thing I like about God and one thing I like about how He works with me and what He does in my life is that those days when I feel that I am waiting, God is doing a lot on the ground in my favor for my sake. Remember the story, the application that was withdrawn and my money was refunded, and then I submitted another one? Yes. At the end of the day, I went back to them and then I withdrew my application myself and I got my money back. All of us that submitted the application the first time, that got to the decision in progress part, you will get to a certain stage where you may not be able to request for a refund. Yes, 90% of them never got back their refund, but I was lucky enough. I got my refund. That means I didn't lose that money. So, which means, and there I was crying, worrying about what I knew nothing about, without knowing that God was actually stalling it so that I will have my money, have my ITA, have everything in my hands. Like, so that He was doing everything so that my benefits will be more. And then I was worrying, I was crying. And this brings me to the part where I am to say that waiting seasons are not always the easiest. Yes. It's very easy for people to assume that, yeah, because you walk with God, because, oh, your life is all about, oh, God will see me through, oh, I have hope in God, I have faith in God, that you're not going to have your like say you're not going to have your weak moments. I mean, those times where you feel like you need to cry, you want to shout, you want to scream, you goodness, you want to slap yourself, ah, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, it's just a case of waiting season is just a case of you still maintaining your hope and your trust in God, knowing that He is going to come through for you. So during this season of me waiting for my relocation to pull through, my journey to be successful, it was a roller coaster of emotion. There were days I cried uncontrollably. There were days I vented unnecessarily. There were days I felt frustrated. But amidst all this, I learned. Like, was it this morning that I posted on my Instagram status, on my Instagram, that life is a curriculum, and whereby each experience and each day is a learning platform for us. Yes, it may be a waiting season for me. It may just be, I may call it my 4 years or my 3 years of pursuing one particular thing, hoping that this is going to work. But in those seasons, in those seasons, I must tell you, a lot happened on the ground without me, without my approval. But at the end of the day, it was God that did it all. And I am enjoying the benefit now. I enjoyed the benefit then. So this is just me using the story to say that yes, this testimony is long overdue, but I'm glad I'm putting it out here finally. I am glad I am able to sit down to record it. Yes, because actually, I know that in those weak moments, in those days that I was crying and anticipating and hoping, I said it with my mouth. And I said, God, just I know that I am in a stage where this is not a case of my eligibility. This is not a case of anything. This is a case of you coming through. This is a case of you doing a miracle. But that one thing I'm going to promise you is that if you work this thing out for me, I am going to testify about it. I did. I said that. And trust me, God did everything for His glory. He made everything work out for my good. And He was done. And then there I was doing, trying to forget the promise I made about testifying. So I'm glad I am here. And I just hope that this video finds someone there, someone out there watching this, and is able to encourage you, is able to inspire you, is able to just reassure you that yes, even though it doesn't look like it at the moment, even though you are so sure that that you shouldn't be there at this point in time, you should be making a progress, just know that you being there, that God is aware of it. Yes, yes, is also normal, or like it's okay even if you forget for a minute that God is the supreme God. Or yes, just be quick to also remember that He is still the supreme God above every other thing. Forget though, but don't forget for too long. Just forget for a second. And then in the next second, John, remember that He is still in the business of making it work out for our own good. Yes. And this is the things I forget, the days I cry or maybe get worried about. And then He still finds a way to send people my way. He still finds a way to speak to me. He still finds a way to speak to me through people directly in so many ways, to just keep my head up and keep on hoping that He's going to come true for me. So this is my story. Maybe I didn't just, I don't know, but maybe I didn't even get to express the emotions that came with it, or maybe I don't know what the story is like. But one thing I know is that it was not an easy one. But God saw me through and He made a way for me. He practically, single handedly made out policies that favored me. He single handedly did things to favor me. That even when it didn't look like it would happen, He showed up. That the things that were impossible with men was indeed possible with Him. The part he said I should not worry, that he's working everything together for my good, it happened. The part where he said that his plans are the ones that will prevail, it's happened. The part where he said that his plans for me are of good and not of disaster, it's happened. The part where he said that he would do exceedingly more than I have ever asked. I was asking for an ITA. God even gave me a refund of my money. I didn't lose my money. And so many other things he has done. And I look back now, it's not a case of anything. I just feel like I need to slap myself a bit for worrying. Why did I even worry? But yeah, maybe because I'm human. Yes, and that is it. So I'm so happy. And I guess this my relocation is just one of the major things that have happened in my life so far. So good. A lot has happened, and I just hope I be consistent with this video and able to share lots of my experiences with you, hoping that in one way or the other it is going to encourage someone out there. It is going to encourage you to just keep on hoping on God. Yes. And funny enough, I am already in another waiting season because when we think about waiting seasons and when we think about working with God, trusting God, waiting seasons are just so long as you're hoping, so long as you're desiring something, there would always be a gap between the time you desired it and the time you get it, and that is the waiting season. And when you talk about that waiting season in particular, I tell you that it comes with lots of emotions. It comes with lots of emotions. It comes with the fear. That fear is the one that triggers the anger and the tears we often see in those seasons. And sometimes it's going to come with confidence, it's going to come with trust in God. And this is the one that triggers the smile we give off, the laughter, the happiness we exude, even in the midst of it all. And so I'm not going to overrule that part. That is just me saying that waiting season is just an inevitable thing. But we as humans will always have to strike a balance between, we always have to choose rightly when it comes to the emotions we give off. Are we going to choose confidence over fear, or are we going to choose fear over confidence? At least we know that when we choose our faith, when we choose confidence in the promises of God, then that is our assurance that we're going to be walking head up, we're going to be walking happily, we're going to wake up and go to bed each night joyfully with a joyous mind and in a joyous spirit. So yeah, and it's a whole lot. Yes, like I always say, cry if you want to cry, but don't cry for too long. Vent if you want to vent, but don't let it overstep. Don't let it get too much. Don't just vent to the extent that you lose it, or probably just say something, or that um you lose control over the things you say out of anger or the rest of them. But yeah, so that is it about waiting season. That is it about this my waiting season. And I also, again and again and again, I am encouraging someone out there who is in one waiting season or the other. I'm telling you now that you're not alone. There are a lot of us who are also waiting for one thing or the other, waiting to make one progress in one aspect of our life or the other. But one thing we will just have to do is that we'll have to hold on to God and His promises. We'll still have to hold on to Him. Yes, He said He will do exceedingly more than we have ever asked Him. He didn't just say that for my relocation, He also said it with regards to everything about my life, and not just about one thing, and not just about me, but also for you. He also said it that it will favor you. He said that even though it doesn't look like it, that when the time is right, He is going to make it swiftly. He's going to make it happen swiftly. He said it. Yes, I remember those were the words I held on to in those seasons. Habakkuk 2:3, put it down in writing. That it looks as if it's delaying, but just know that when the time is right, he would make it happen. It's Isaiah 60:22. He said when the time is right, he would make it happen swiftly. So please, I want to use this opportunity, and I hope that this story, this long story of mine, inspires you to hang in there, trust in God, have faith in Him, do not let go of Him, hold on to Him tightly. He's the beginning and the end. He's the impossibility specialist, and He will make a way for us where there is no way. I am sure, I am certain, I am talking from experience. When people say there is no God, I tell them, no, you have not experienced Him. If you experience Him for yourself, then you don't need anybody to tell you that there is God. There is God. I have seen Him work over time in my life. I have seen Him show up in impossible cases. So, yeah. And this is just it. I just hope this episode is not everywhere. I just hope you're able to take one or two things home. And yes, I'm making this video. I'm also advising myself. And this is the end of this episode. And thank you for stopping by once again. And thank you for listening to this episode of Thrive and Self podcast, which also happens to be my first video podcast. Yes, thank you. And by God's grace, see you in my next episode. Bye.